Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Germany once again, and we're going to continue on with this little mini-series of German reviews that I've been doing over the last little while. Now, the beer that we're going to have a look at today is from a brewery that I've never tried anything from before. These guys are, however, quite a recognisable German beer brand in their local area, and the beer itself is a style that I haven't covered all that much on the channel, to be honest with you, and I would like to do more of them, but the main thing is that you can only really get one particular example of this style quite readily. So yeah, when I saw these ones on Beers of Europe, I thought, you know, we have to get these and explore this style a little bit more. So yeah, needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good one. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Köln, or Cologne as you would say in English, and we're going to have a look at my first beer from the Kölner Küppers Kölsch Brauerei, if I've pronounced that correctly, and I do apologise for any bad German pronunciations in this video. But the beer we're talking about, of course, is the Küppers Kölsch. It comes in at 4.8% ABV, and I think from the name of the beer and the brewery, you know exactly what style this one is. So yeah, this one, as I say, 4.8% ABV. The Kölsch as a style is quite an interesting one. It is an ale, but they are usually very low fermentation temperature ales, which means they're very light and very drinkable, almost as drinkable as the kind of Helles lagers actually. So yeah, not too many of these beers around, to be honest with you. The only one that's really readily accessible is the Früh Kölsch. So yeah, the Spring Kölsch as that would be in English, and we reviewed that beer on the channel maybe about 5 years ago or something like that. So like I said, definitely cool to get a chance to have a look at some other Kölsches, and I do want to go to, you know, Köln, Dusseldorf and Dortmund again and have a look at the local beer styles there, because there are some very, very nice breweries there. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what it's going to have in store for us. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I'll do in the future from Kölner Küppers Kölsch Brauerei. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So yeah, just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the German playlist along with a number of other things, and you can of course check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then and tell you a little bit about Kölner Küppers Kölsch Brauerei. So, you can just tell that's going to be a mouthful throughout this video, so again, I apologise. But yeah, the Küppers Kölsch beer was first launched in 1962 by the Wicküller Brauerei from Wuppertal-Elberfeld. So this brewery had been founded back in 1845 as a Hausbrauerei of Franz Ferdinand Wicküller, and the brewery grew to be the leading brewery in the Bergische Land area of Nordrhein-Westfalen from the late 19th to the late 20th century. But in 1893, the Wicküller Brauerei opened a shop in Brunostraße in the south of the Köln Altstadt to sell their export beer in bottles, and then later in 1913 they acquired a 4,000 square metre plot of land on the Alteburger Straße in the Bayental area of the city, where they constructed a brewery. It didn't say exactly when they constructed this though. But in 1962, the Küppers Kölsch brand was launched and brewed first under contract at the Früh Brauerei before brewing it themselves in Wuppertal from 1964 onwards. But the fact that it wasn't brewed in Köln actually resulted in legal action from the other Kölsch breweries, and so in 1965 production was moved to the site on Alteburger Straße, which was home to a 1.4 million hectolitre brewery known as Kölner Küppers Kölsch Brauerei, which is still the name they use today. But at this time the beer was bottled quite extensively extensively in comparison to other Kölsch brands, as many were unsure on how well Kölsch would fare as a bottled beer. But sales went well, and Küppers rode the wave of growing popularity of Kölsch beer in Köln, and apparently in 1965 only about 35% of the beer drunk in the city was Kölsch, but by 1980 this had risen to 90%, so it basically tripled almost in the space of about 15 years. So that's pretty impressive actually, and it's kind of cool that they went back to drinking their local beer style. But in 1990, as Kölner Küppers Kölsch Brauerei was sold as part of the Wickele Brauerei to Grolsch from the Netherlands, and then in 1994 to the Brau and Brunnen Group from Dortmund. But in 2001, the facility at Altenburgstrasse was taken over by Dom Brauerei, and they continued to produce Küppers Kölsch there until under contract until 2004. And Dom only stayed there until 2005, and then sold the site in 2006. But since this point, the beer has been brewed by Radeberger as part of their Haus Kölscher Brautradition range, which is originally known as the Frühe Kölner Verbund Brauereien. So basically, like the it's almost like the joined or the joint spring Kölsch breweries, if I'm translating that correctly. But this was brewed at this is brewed at their brewery on Bergische Gladbacher Straße in Köln-Mühlheim. But there is no independent Wickele brewery today, but the Wickele Pils is produced by the Dortmund Actium Brauerei, while the Radler is made by Jever, and I believe this one is still brewed by the Radeberger group, if I remember correctly. But yeah, it's still brewed within the Köln city limits, which means that you can call this a Kölsch. So yeah, that was all the information I was really able to find on the Küppers Kölsch brand and the the Kölner Küppers Kölsch Brauerei, to give it its full name. But yeah, if you want to learn a little bit more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. But if they're doing I would be quite keen to try the Wickele Pils if I can come across that at some stage. Radlers I'm not a great fan of, though, I have to admit that straight away. But yeah, all those links are in the description below. Let's have a wee look at this beer and see how we get on. So yeah, just to let you have a little look at the artwork on this one. It is quite simple and straightforward. There you can see Küppers Kölsch, and that's also on the top label. I love how the German bottles always have top labels like this, and you can see the bottle cap on this one there. I'm just trying to make sure it doesn't reflect too much in the light. But this is a half-litre bottle, but it's a pretty damn tall one actually, and I'm pretty sure this is the same type of bottle that you'll get the DAB beers in. So yeah, it probably is. You can see that there's a connection there, obviously, to DAB. But yeah, it says it's on the back. It says Küppers Brauerei GmbH, Postfach 800143. Yeah, basically cool. Don't need to say all these numbers. But yeah, 4.8% Kölsch beer. This one, as I said earlier, the Kölsch is a very light kind of blonde ale that's fermented at a lower temperature. Remember, the technical difference between lagers and ales is the different types of yeast that they use, which ferment at different temperatures. Lagers ferment at lower temperatures, usually 8 to 12 degrees. Ales ferment at higher temperatures, 15 to 18 degrees. Top fermenting yeasts for ales, bottom fermenting yeasts for lagers. But yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass and just see what it has in store for us. I'm really curious about this one. One thing I will also point out is that with a Kölsch, most often they drink these beers in kind of Stein glasses, but they're usually quite tall and slim glasses. I'm drinking this one actually out of my Pilsner Urquell glass because I think I just love drinking German and Czech beers out of this thing. But yeah, that's just how we're going to do it. So I can tell you something, this beer smells great already. There's just something about the aroma of these German beers and the German malts that just gets me. Absolutely love it. But yeah, you can see this beer's poured pretty much as you would expect from the style, but before the head disappears, we'll have a quick look at that. I could have poured this one a little bit more aggressively, of course, and given it some more foam, but yeah, That was just me. But yeah, you can see that when the beer poured, it had about a half finger of a frothy, I would say slightly cream-coloured head. It's got a lovely ring around the edge of the glass there, and the head on the top is just fading away to be a nice kind of thin, foamy layer there. But you can see it's kind of medium-sized bubbles in that ring, but a few foamier ones up toward the top. But you can see that the beer itself is a lovely, I would say, quite a rich golden straw colour, this one. I remember the Fru Kölsch actually being quite a little bit paler than this one, to be quite honest with you. This one has a lovely kind of rich golden type straw colour to it. There's one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass at the bottom, but there is a steady stream of carbonation visible just going up to the top of this one, and you can see that the beer itself is crystal clear. It's not even got a little bit of that natural haziness to it that you can sometimes get from this style. But yeah, it looks very, very nice, this one. Nothing untoward with the beer regarding its appearance. I think we should go on and have a little look at the aroma of this one and see what it's all about. It does smell very, very nice. The thing with Kölsches is that the aroma of these is very similar to what you get from a Helles lager. So I think, you know, when it comes to the alt beers, I would maybe struggle to just, you know, if I was around them every day, it would be easier. But you know, the alt beers from Dusseldorf are quite comparable to the German Dunkels. The Kölsches are actually quite comparable, flavour profile wise, to the Helles lagers for me. And this really does smell like some of the different Helles lagers that I've come across from Germany over the last wee while. It smells absolutely beautiful. As I say, there's just something about the German malts that just always lingers with me. But this beer gives you everything you'd expect. A little bit of kind of big, you know, it's got quite a nice little bit of bready character to it. There's a little bit of sweetness in there. You've got the lovely, smooth and still bright German noble hops, and just that tiny little bit of fruitiness. The aroma on this is lovely. Absolutely lovely. So let's break it down and just describe it for you a little bit more in depth then before we taste the beer. So the backbone of this beer is, of course, a lovely kind of fresh white bready bread crust. That's the absolute backbone of the beer. Within that you've got a very slight touch of woodiness, I would say, a little bit of a woody character, and on top of that some Jacob's cream crackery notes. I really do like how all of that pieces together, in fact. So yeah, the aroma of this beer, I think, is really nice, and it's right up my street. Above the crackery notes, you start to get the bready characteristics. So there's a little bit of a slightly sweet wholemeal brown bready character in there, and on top of that, you have you've got a lovely kind of smooth white bready character coming out of this one, which is, you know, it's lovely. I miss the German bakeries when I was in when I was living in Heidelberg. I used to love going and getting a big loaf of bread for the you know, eat twice a week, and then getting a pretzel just to eat on the way home because I loved them. It's great. But yeah, you can smell that lovely kind of fresh, fluffy and sweet German white bread in there. But then above that, you start to get a little bit of sweetness out of the malt base in this beer. So yeah, above that white bready character, you really start to get the nice, you really do start to get a very nice kind of, how would you say, you start to get a little mix. There's a little bit of an almost, I don't know if you could describe it as honeycomb, but it's quite a biscuity sweetness that you get out of this beer. So yeah, in the middle of the nose you do have a little bit of a more kind of like honeycomb or concentrated biscuit or something like that. Then you've got the more kind of crisp biscuity characters coming out of this one, which is good to see. I do like having that balance between sweetness and kind of smooth or savoury character, if you like, in these beers. But yeah, the malty balance in this one, I think, is really very, very nice. So yeah, I don't know if there's really very much else to say about the malty side of this beer, to be honest with you. It just gives you everything that you would expect, but it just smells very, very smooth, actually. So yeah, I really like that about this one. On the the hoppy side of things, then again it is pretty much what you'd expect. I'm sure it will be Hallertau or Tettnang hops that are being used in this one, but you've got that typical little touch of earthiness in the back of the nose. You get a little bit of herbal character, some nice bright floral aromaticity, and a good little bit of grassiness. But I would say the aroma in this beer from the green side of the hops is leaning more toward. It's got quite a lot of grassiness to it, and it's also got quite a nice herbal quality to it as well. Those are the two most dominant components of the those are the two most dominant components of the green component for me, I would say. But yeah, let's round off the look at the aroma with a little bit of a look at the fruity character in this one. Yeah. So for me, it's really quite straightforward on the fruity character. Well, that's the thing with Kölsches. They are very straightforward beers. They are intended just to be drinkable, so they don't have the most complex flavour profiles and aroma profiles and stuff like that. But yeah, for me, this beer has a good little bit of, there's a little bit of sultana in there, you know, dry white, green, grapey character. You have a little bit of an oily pear as well, maybe a little touch of apricot and things too, and maybe just a little touch, maybe just a tiny little touch of like a gooseberry or fresh green apple or something like that. I'm getting a wee bit of gooseberry out of this one, just at the front of the nose. Very slight oily, fruity character to this beer. So yeah, aroma-wise, the flavour of this beer is very, very nice actually. Yeah, as I always say, take a little bit of time to just ponder over the aroma of your beers before you get stuck into them. For me, that's half the experience when it comes to craft beer and whiskey and sake and stuff like this. And yeah, for me, it's part of the learning experience too, to learn a little bit more about this style. So yeah, this is going to be interesting. Let's have a taste of this beer then. So this one is the Küppers Kölsch, coming in at 4.8% ABV, from the Kölner Küppers Kölsch Brauerei, if I'm remembering the order of the words correctly, in Köln, over in Germany. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, Skål, cheers, Prost. Yeah, I have to say that's pretty. That is pretty damn nice, I have to say. As expected, just very light, very drinkable, lovely, smooth and kind of sweet beer actually, in a sense. Yeah, gives you everything that you would kind of expect from the style. Yeah, and it's kind of interesting, just when I think about it, most of the Kölsch beers that I have drunk before, I've probably had more Kölsch beers from Japan than I have from Köln in Germany itself. Of course, there is this thing about the name. You can't call it a Kölsch officially if it's not brewed in the Köln area. But yeah, if we're just talking about the style generally, like I had a really nice one recently from Beek Brewery in England. That was a great Kölsch actually. And then yeah, we had the. Other than that, we had I've had quite a few from different little GB breweries in Japan, because of course they learned to brew from the Germans. But yeah, this is really nice for me. As I say, just a light drinkable beer. It kind of gives you everything that you would want. It just, the main difference for me, you can tell when you actually drink this beer. I was talking about the similarity of the aroma and flavour profiles and stuff like this with earlier in comparison with the Helles. You can feel that this beer is a little bit thicker and a bit more oily and stuff in its mouthfeel, and that would be the thing that defines it. So it would define a Kölsch beer for me. But the actual flavour profile is quite similar to a German Helles lager. So yeah, this is nice, but big thumbs up for me. I do like Küppers Kölsch, so we need to go and check out the restaurant in central Köln at some stage. So yeah, way everything goes together in this, I think, is really very nice. But well, you know, it gives you everything you want from the style. A bit of breadiness, a little bit of sweetness, nice little bit of hoppy character, and a very slight oily, fruity note as well. So yeah, let's just break this beer down and describe it for you a little bit more in depth, as we always do. So yeah, middle third of your palate then in this beer. The backbone is absolutely that little bit of kind of fresh white bready bread crust that you would expect. Further forward on that middle third of your palate, you get a little touch of woodiness coming out of this one, which is great, but that's quite minimal, to be honest with you. There's a wee touch of cracker above the there's a wee touch of like a sweet crackery character above the bread crust, but then above that you have a wee bit of a more you have a layer, kind of a thinner layer of a wholemeal kind of brown bready type note coming out of this one. So yeah, there's a little bit of that wholemeal kind of brown bready character, and then above that you've got a smoother and kind of fluffier white bready note coming out of the beer. Yeah, and that kind of lingers there. The breadiness really lingers there into the aftertaste for this one. So yeah, wholemeal brown bready character, fluffy white bready notes, and yeah, the way that goes together is lovely. The bready character is actually very light and very smooth in this one, and that's another kind of benchmark of the Kölsch style for me. But above that smooth white bready layer, that's when you start to get the sweeter aspects out of this one. It's so easy to drink. You could easily tan this. You could easily just tan this bottle in a few seconds if you really were of a mind to. You could do that. But yeah, as I say, above the white bread layer you start to get the sweetness of the beer. So in the dead centre of your palate you've got a little oily sort of circle that comes out of this one. So there's that little oily circle, concentrated, biscuity kind of thing that comes out of the beer. As you move further out toward the edges of your palate with this one, you've got a wee bit more of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing coming out of the beer. So that's great. So yeah, nice oily, as I say, nice kind of oily biscuity note, like oily concentrated biscuit, or I don't know if you could call it caramel note in the middle of your palate, but then as you move out toward the edges of your palate above the bread, a kind of crisper McVitie's digestive biscuity type flavour coming out of this one. This is really pretty damn nice. Yeah, in terms of the malty in the middle third of your palate, I should say, I think this is everything we really need to say about that. So let's go on to the back third of the palate then. As I've always say, the back third of your palate will give you very similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, but they just come out at different intensities. So yeah, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, yeah, the differences between those, that border region, you get a little bit of like brown bready character in the base and a lot of white bread above that, and then on the back third of the palate you get all the kind of similar flavours coming out. Just remember though that sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours tend to come out further back. So yeah, the base of that back third of your palate, you've got a really nice kind of smooth bread crusty character coming out of this one, which is great. So yeah, the smooth bread crusty character there is a little bit drier than further forward on the palate. You get a little bit of Jacob's cream cracker sitting above that too. Then you've got the kind of wholemeal brown bready layer, which feels a little bit lighter and taller and more airy. And then above that you've got that fluffy, you do have that fluffy white bready character just coming out of the beer, which is great. So yeah, the fluffy, the white bready character in this beer is on the back third of the palate is lovely because it builds a good bridge with the yeasty flavours. So you can feel that taller, more airy, fluffy white bready character, and then some of the kind of biscuit, the drier aspects of the biscuit and things yeah, the drier aspects of the biscuity side of the beer just creep over into that back third of your palate too, and then you've got all the yeasty character sitting above that. So yeah, that goes together really, really quite nicely. Yeah, so the yeasty side of the beer then, we'll focus on that. So above that back third of your palate, you just get this little more concentrated flavour. It's like a more dense wholemeal brown bready character. It's quite a sweet brown bready character, and it's kind of got a little bit more woodiness to it as well, and it's just wrapped in this little honeycomb sort of thing. I always find that when it comes to the yeasty flavours, I get a little bit of honeycomb. I'm not sure exactly why, but I just always do. But you can certainly feel that on the back third of your palate, the flavour is taller, and as you come further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, the way it goes together, I think, is pretty nice. So that gets a thumbs up from me. Yeah, let's focus on the green component of the beer now. So the back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness in there, which is good. So you nice little bit of earthiness in the back corners of your palate. Then as you move further forward, it's a little bit of a kind of herbal character there, and very smooth. But as you move further forward, you can feel the herbal character just gradually progresses. It sort of transforms, if you like, to being a little bit more floral and aromatic. And then as you reach the kind of front curve of your tongue, you get that little bit of a lighter, more grassy sort of thing. But the green component for me in this beer, it's kind of oily actually. It's got a more oily green component to it rather than anything else. It's not too bright and dry and bitter and stuff like that, but Kölsches are not the most bitter of beer styles, that's definitely fair to say. But yeah, this works for this beer. The smoothness, that's the thing I like about Kölsches, is the smoothness you get out of them, and the fact that I've redeveloped my taste for German Helles in recent years is probably assisting the fact that I'm enjoying this particular beer, because, as I say, the flavour profile is pretty similar. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the green component. Let's focus on the front third of your palate and the fruity aspects of the beer. So yeah, border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of a kind of bready build-up in this one, which is good. So yeah, lovely little bit of a wholemeal brown bready character in the base, which is kind of sweet actually, fluffy white bread above that. Then the base of that, front third of your palate, there's a little bit of a kind of bread crusty character in there. On top of that, you have a more, you do get the kind of sweeter wholemeal brown bread and a little bit of the smooth white bread, and then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, that goes together really nicely. So yeah, the oily part of this beer, or the fruity side of this beer actually, let's focus on that. At the back of that front third of your palate, you do have these little kind of sultana, you know, dry white, green, grapey sort of flavours there. So like a sultana type flavour you get at the very back of that front third of your palate. As you move further forward, you start to get a more oily pear type note. In the dead centre of that front third of your palate, there's maybe like a little touch of dry apricot there, and as you move further forward, the oily pear kind of sits there, and then you've got a wee bit of a, you do have a little touch of a kind of, I would say, yeah, you've got a little bit of a more, there's a little touch of gooseberry in there, but you do get a little hint of like a fresh green apple on top as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate. And the gooseberry, the fruity notes in this one are also very smooth, and that kind of is quite in keeping with that's quite in keeping with the other flavours you're getting out of this beer. This is a very smooth, drinkable beer, this one. I really like that about this one. So yeah, it's good stuff. In terms of the flavour, I think that's everything we need to say. So let's just round off this review with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So This beer for me, it's kind of top end of light bodied, bottom end of mid bodied. The carbonation is very, very smooth in this one, and like I say, that's one of the defining features of a Kölsch ale for me, is the smoothness of the mouthfeel. It's got a little bit of an oily slickness to it as well, but yeah, smooth but slightly oily and slick. Bottom end of mid-bodied beer, this one. I think that describes it quite nicely. In terms of the IBU count and the bitterness with this beer, yeah, in terms of the bitterness in this beer, then I'd say it's 20-ish IBUs. I think, yeah, about 20 IBUs, maybe 25 at most, is probably what we're talking with this beer. The Kölsch is not a bitter beer at all, I would say. But the malt base in this one, you've got a bit of dryness underneath, you've got a lovely smoothness from the bready character. It gives you a little bit of sweetness too, and then above that you've got that more biscuity type sweetness coming out of it. The fruity side of the beer is lovely and kind of oily for me, lots of dry fruity characters, a bit of pear, a bit of sultana, and a nice little bit of gooseberry and stuff like that too. But overall, as I say, this is just a really nice drinkable beer, and it is, it is a mass-produced beer, this one. But as I've said in many of these reviews, when it comes to quality control, the Germans know what they're doing. They really do know what they're doing with these kind of things. But yeah, I think this one has been a really nice one to try, to be honest with you, and it has made me appreciate the Kölsch that little bit more. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that with this one. So this is the Küppers Kölsch from the Kölner Küppers Kölsch Brauerei, if I'm remembering the full name correctly, in Köln over in Germany. My first Kölsch review in quite a wee while, actually. But yeah, you will see a few of these over the next wee while, so you can look forward to those. But yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from the Küppers beer brand, and we will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the fairly near future. But until then, thank you for watching. Check out my social media, check out the Kölner Küppers Kölsch Brauerei social media, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and prost.